Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. Funding for the Department of Homeland Security is in limbo. House Republicans want to strip out monies that would finance the president's executive actions on immigration. Now, Democrats want a clean bill, and the clock ticks as funding is set to expire. To talk about all of this and his recent discovery about Medicaid funding of abortion is member of the House Financial Services Committee, Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin's 7th District. Great to have you back.
Raymond, thanks for having me on.
Let's talk about ISIS. We have to start there. We have these reports, 350 Christian Syrians rounded up. Now they're threatening to kill them unless some conditions are met. How do we deal with this when the Kurds are saying in Iraq, we're outgunned?
Well, so first off, we have our Coptic Christians we know who are beheaded. We have individuals who are being burned. We hear rumors of folks being crucified. I mean, these are barbarian, evil folks. And I think we need an administration that recognizes that and is willing to confront them and actually beat them. My concern, Raymond, is this, that the administration, by its lack of action, is giving Iran and ISIS both time. And they want time for different reasons, but Iran wants time to build a nuclear weapon, which is a huge problem for the region, but specifically Israel. And ISIS wants time to take more territory, recruit more jihadists, and raise more money. And the stronger they get, the more difficult it is going to be for us to defeat them. And the problem that we have in the House is the president doesn't have a strategy, doesn't have the will to address this evil. And our concern is that if we don't address it today, it doesn't get easier tomorrow or the day after. It only gets more difficult and more deadly.
But our policy seems muddle-headed here. I mean, in Syria, we are arming the rebels. In Iraq, we're arming the Iraqi government. Who is the Iraqi government now working with?
Well, we know the Iraqi government is now working with Iran. And so we have the tribal leaders in Anbar that rose up in the late 2000s and fought back against al-Qaeda and won. They're saying, send us arms so we can now fight ISIS. And they came here to Washington, D.C., and they asked the administration to send them arms directly. And the administration told them that those arms are going to go to the Iraqi government and they will send them out to Anbar province and to these leaders. And these folks are saying, listen, you know that's not going to happen because the Iranians will never allow that to happen. The bottom line is there's no strategy. And if anyone thinks that we're containing or beating ISIS, it's not true. We're losing.
Well, I'll say, this is the FBI director, James Comey, and he's speaking here about ISIS and its penetration of the homeland. Roll that.
I have homegrown violent extremist investigations in every single state. Right? Until a few weeks ago, there was 49 states. Alaska had none, which I couldn't quite figure out. But Alaska has now joined the group. So we have investigations of people in various stages of radicalizing in all 50 states. I tell my state and local partners, this is about all of us being connected tightly to each other. This isn't a New York phenomenon or a Washington phenomenon. This is all 50 states, and in ways that are very hard to see.
What do we do? These people are here. They're being radicalized in our midst.
And it's frightening. You know what? What I learned in this town, I'm a Wisconsin guy, but I learned here that people can have differences of opinions and they can have different strategies. And I may not agree with them, but I understand why they believe what they believe and why they're doing what they're doing. I don't understand the administration's policy, if you can even call it a policy. I don't understand their strategy. And that's what's so confusing for so many of us. We don't know what they're doing. And I have to believe that the strategy, if there is one, is to cut a deal with Iran and let Iran step in and take care of the Middle East. This is frightening, and that's why we can't get other governments in the region to step up and join us, because they don't trust us and they don't trust Iran.
Wow. Let's talk for a moment, because this all kind of dovetails, in my mind at least. The president signed a series of executive orders that would grant amnesty and green cards to dreamers, so-called dreamers, young people who have come here. Given this radicalization that we're seeing taking place among some factions in the United States, are you concerned that this is a national security issue, this question of granting a blanket amnesty for anybody who happens to be in country? And is that why the Republicans are trying to find some way to defund it as part of this Department of Homeland Security funding package?
Our concern isn't that we have radical dreamers. I mean, a lot of folks have come here, no fault of their own. Their families are here. This is the only country they've ever known. We get why the president did it. We disagree with how he did it.
The executive order.
The executive order for the dreamers. But he expanded that now to parents of legal citizens as well. well. And the problem is he's not following the rule of law. And when you give some blanket amnesty to folks, one, I think you're giving them false promise because it's not a rule change. It's not a change in the law. What it is just an executive order that's only good for a few years and can be overturned by the courts.
Right.
And so we're fighting a battle about our co-equal branches of government. And the president is acting like a king. He doesn't have the authority to do what he's done. And you got to go back in the history. We believe we need to treat those who've come here as immigrants fairly. We were working on a plan, a bipartisan plan that would have secured our border, given internal security, and treated those fairly who have come here without documentation, whether they're able to stay as legal in a legal status but not citizens. What happened was all the kids, remember from Central America, came to our border. That took us off track. One of our leaders lost their primary. That took us off track. And then we're in political season. We were going to come back after the elections and re-get immigration reform done. And instead of letting that happen, the president stepped in and did executive action. This is more about politics for him. He thinks that he's going to have the Latino Hispanic vote for generations to come by doing this, instead of doing the right thing by it.
And the Republicans, in the president's estimation, are holding the Department of Homeland Security hostage by not funding the entire package. Here's what he said the other day.
Now, unfortunately, a number of Republican governors chose to sue. They found a district court judge who has enjoined, meaning stopped, us going forward with this program. But that's just the first part of the process. This is just one federal judge. We have appealed it very aggressively. We're going to be as aggressive as we can because not only do we know that the law is on our side, but history is also on our side. And in the meantime, what we said to Republicans is instead of trying to hold hostage funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which is so important for our national security, fund that, and let's get on with actually passing comprehensive immigration reform.
And the truth is, the president has said 22 times that he doesn't have the authority to do this executive action. In the courts in Texas, the federal judge has said this is unlawful and he can't do it. And so now we're looking at how do we fund the Department of Homeland Security? Well, we want to fund all the agencies that protect our homeland, but we want to exclude the unlawful action. And the president and the Democrats are holding all the funding to protect and preserve our nation. They're holding it hostage.
Mitch McConnell in the Senate, your Republican majority leader, he signed on to this deal that would issue a clean bill. Do you support that? Where's the House?
So the reason that he tried to get 6 Democrats to, because listen, there's 54 Republicans in the House. They need 60 votes to get to the floor and debate the bill that we sent them, and none of the Democrats will vote to get them through cloture, which means to get to the floor to address our bill. So he was stuck sending us what is going to be a clean bill, right? Which funds everything. That's going to be very problematic in the House. We are meeting right now to decide how do we move forward. Do we do a short-term 2 or 3 week extension why the courts hear the case and why this executive action has been stayed? Or do we say, listen, we're not going to fund it. We're going to send a bill back to the Senate that funds Homeland Security but doesn't fund the unlawful executive action. That's going to be decided tonight.
I want to talk for a moment about some of the things you've been discovering on your Financial Services Committee. This Operation Choke Point. Tell me what this is. How this is using banking regulations, isn't it?
This is frightening stuff. So what's happened is you had a couple of activists, bureaucrats in the Department of Justice, and they don't like mid-prime, short-term lenders. They don't like guns, gun dealers. They don't like ammunition. So what they did is very cleverly, they partnered with bank regulators like the FDIC, and in that partnership, they put pressure on banks in America to stop doing business with these groups, these industries that they don't like. The problem is, these are lawful businesses. They've done nothing wrong. And they've had no judge, no jury, no trial, no due process. And these businesses have gone out of business across America. And Raymond, oftentimes, they had no idea why their banks wouldn't do business with them anymore.
So what can Congress do?
Well, we're going to hold them to account. What you realize in my position is it is incredibly hard to fire bad actors in government, but we will embarrass them. We will put pressure on them. Raymond, the Operation Choke Point, this is just like the IRS targeting conservatives. This is an abuse of agencies that are being used for political purposes. This is like the old Soviet Union. This is like Venezuela. This is like Cuba. This is un-American stuff, and we're going to expose it. We're going to hold them to account, and we're going to push back on it.
What is this reputation risk business?
Well, what they'll do is they'll say, listen.
What does that mean?
Well, so they'll say to a bank, if you bank with this gun dealer, that's reputationally risky.
I see.
The bank board decides reputational risk, not regulators in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, but when a regulator tells you that,
they step away and they won't do it. And what's frightening is now you have your bureaucracy stepping in and deciding what businesses are appropriate and which ones are not. Just one other slight story here. They're going after smoke shops as well.
Yeah.
They're bending over backwards to let the drug dealers in Colorado bank, because it's a federal crime.
Sure, we got to protect that green industry.
They're able to bank in the banking system, but smoke shops are not. That's how insane these folks out here in Washington, D.C. are.
Crazy. Let's talk about what you've discovered vis-a-vis Medicaid charges and reimbursements. How Medicaid is actually unbundling the expenses of abortion. Where does this turn up? How did this come to light?
We're all aware of the Hyde Amendment. Federal funding can't be used for abortion.
Right. That's what I assumed was
that's what I did too.
Across the board.
Well, 10 years ago, an audit was done of California and New York and their family planning programs that send Medicaid dollars to abortion providers. And there was $3 million in New York and $17 million in California that was misappropriated for abortions. Nothing has been done in regard to audits since that audit that happened 10 years ago. Wow. So we've come back and said, listen, we need to have a whole and complete audit on how this Medicaid money is being used, and is it being used for abortions? We have a right to know. We have a right to cut it off. And we've got Chris Smith, as you know, as the chairman of our pro-life caucus on board, and other pro-lifers are going to get on board. And this is, again, taking a bite at the apple to make sure we're holding our government to account, and at least minimally our tax money is not going to fund abortion. And
when they say unbundling, what are they doing? They're breaking up the associated costs of abortion and filtering it through the Medicaid reimbursement program? Is that what's happening?
Yes, but what we're able to do is rebundle it and see how these Medicaid dollars are actually being used to fund abortion, and those audits will expose it. This is important stuff.
Congressman Sean Duffy, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Raymond.